Okay, so this is pretty incredible. Just last week, Google's lawyers told a federal court that the fact is that today, the open web is in rapid decline. And then a bunch of newspapers came out with headlines quoting them, and Google kind of tried to walk it back. Whether it was a Freudian slip or not, their defense was, oh, we don't mean the whole open web is in rapid decline. We just mean the part of the open web that focuses on display advertising. So, like blogs, news sites, that sort of thing. And I'm not really sure if that makes it any better, but kind of the key point is the same, which is that even Google's own attorneys admit that content publishers and websites are under threat right now. And what follows in this presentation is my opinion. Everything is my opinion about why the open web is in rapid decline. I think that it's because Google is using artificial intelligence to wage a war on the fundamental principles of the open web. And I think that it's high time that we as web creators do something about this. If you are a web publisher who makes money off of creating content online, you're going to want to listen to this whole presentation. I'm going to walk through the long history of how Google has abused and exploited the web, what is happening now with respect to a forming a AI licensing marketplace that is forming. And I really want to educate you about what's going on behind the scenes and what's ahead of us for the road. So here's what I want you to know. I'm going to tell you what I want you to know, what I want you to do, and how I want you to feel at the end of this presentation. Here are the main things I want you to know. I want you to know that Google is now an answer engine. It's not just a search engine anymore. With AI, they want to be the place that people go for answers. I also want you to know that AI is basically breaking the social contract that allows the open web to operate, that allows us to do what we do as web publishers. I want to tell you about a AI licensing marketplace that is forming. This is the good news. There is somewhat good news. There is an AI licensing marketplace that offers a new business model for the web in this AI first future. A lot of it's happening in back rooms, in sort of secret deals that are going underreported. And I think particularly for smaller web creators, you may not really know what's going on. So I wanted to make this video and put this out there to try to help educate you on what I see happening in this licensing marketplace. And also because a lot of small creators and small web publishers are probably thinking to themselves, you know, Nate, I'm just an independent web publisher. I don't have lawyers. I can't sue Google. I can't negotiate an agreement. I'm not going to get a licensing deal. And I understand where you're coming from. Like oftentimes as an independent creator myself, it can feel like it is very hard for us to have access to fairness when it comes to creating on the open web. But at the same time, there are some developments that might allow for independent creators to get in on this AI licensing marketplace. However, in order to do it, we're going to need leverage. We can't just keep giving away our content to AI bots for free and expect to get paid. So those are the things I want you to know. What I want you to do as a web creator is to update your robots.txt file to block AI bots. This is how we get leverage. I also want you to block them at the server level. I want you to update your terms of service so that you expressly say how you want AI bots to use your content. And if you don't want them to compete against you with your own content, you need to say that. I want you to talk to your audience about artificial intelligence, lobby Google and your government, and most importantly, spread the word, because this is going to work better when there are more of us doing this. I have a written guide to all of these action steps. And if you don't want to watch this video, you can just go check out that guide right now. It's about a 5-minute read, and it will take you maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe you'll need a little bit of time with your developer, depending, but it should take you pretty quickly to actually implement the steps in that guide. I talk about all of these first 3 things, how to do these. I've got little copy and paste snippets that you can use for blocking bots in your robots.txt. I've also got copy and paste snippets for your terms of service and instructions on how to block bots at the server level. So all of this is in that written guide. You'll find that wherever the link is in this video. And I'll also have a QR code at the end of this presentation. Now, how do I want you to feel at this end of this presentation? Well, I want you to feel a little upset, because you should be upset at the fact that Google and other AI companies are using your content against you. But I want you to feel empowered, because I do think that there are things that we can do as creators, particularly together, that can help to change the future direction of the web, because the web is at a pivotal moment with AI. This really is an inflection point, and what we do in this moment in late 2025 and early 2026 is going to determine the future of web publishing. So if you care about that, pay attention to this presentation, and hopefully at the end, I will arm you with some tools so that we can fight back together. Hi, I'm Nate Hake, if you don't know me. I'm a recovering American litigation attorney. In 2016, I left my job to travel the world. Along the way, I founded my travel site, Travel Lemming. I'm very grateful that being able to publish on the web has allowed me to build an independent business and to do what I love, creating travel advice from myself and my team of local travel creators. Some of you may know me from my Twitter profile, where I'm a bit of a loudmouth. You can find me at Nate J. Hake. And I tweet, I tweet my opinion. I don't varnish it. I'm not someone who holds back. If you want to know what I'm thinking about web publishing, you can find me there. But I really have I try to go there and online in general and act as an advocate for small and independent publishers. Because one thing I've noticed in my years of being a web creator online is that, the big publishers, they have lawyers, they have lobbyists, they have PR people, they have VC money. They have a ton of relationships with other publications within their VC portfolio, and they have people that are fighting for them. They have lobbyists, they have industry groups, they have all of that. For small and independent publishers, there's not much of anyone who is out there fighting for them. And with my litigation history, I also have some political background. I'm just an advocate at heart. Like, I see injustice in the world and I want to fix it. And particularly when I know the pain of that injustice, I'm just motivated to do something about it. So that's what animates me. People often say, Nate, why are you tweeting? What are you doing? But, I think we have pressured Google to make some significant changes for independent publishers already. And I do think that when independent publishers get up and speak together, we can do some cool stuff together. Among other things, I was among those 20 creators who were invited out to Google's search headquarters last October for the Google Creator Summit. We met with the search team. I grilled one of their executives about AI. That's me right there at Google headquarters with a coffee. Okay, so I want to start off this presentation addressing something, which is this idea that Google owes you nothing. I've heard this a lot. I've heard this a lot in the web publishing community. And I understand why people think it. I understand why people think this, but I'm here to persuade you today that I think that this is false, or at least that I think we should stop saying this. Because effectively, with this AI content licensing marketplace that I'm going to be talking about, we are entering into what is effectively a collective bargaining situation as web creators. And when we're out here saying Google owes you nothing, all we're doing is reducing our negotiating position. We're telling each other, oh, hey, your content's not worth anything. Your work's not worth anything. And this is going to be really problematic as we get into collective negotiations effectively with Google and other AI companies. Now, with all that said, I recognize sometimes when people say Google doesn't owe you anything, they mean something slightly different. And so I'm going to quickly tell you a few things that I do think are true. And if this is what you mean when you say Google owes you nothing, I would encourage you to say this specifically instead of saying Google owes you nothing. So it's of course true that Google doesn't owe you just because you publish. Like, you can't just spam out a bunch of ChatGPT content on the web and expect to get paid for it or expect to get clicks for it. Of course not. You have to actually create something of value. And if you're listening to this, my audience for this video are people who are trying to create real human content, like trying to do it the right way. If that's not you, you're probably not going to find value out of this video anyway. So I'm assuming that you're trying to create something that's actually of value. Also, I think it's true. Sometimes people say this, they mean, you should be writing not for algorithms, but you should be writing for users. 100% agree with that. With that said, users search. A lot of times people will talk about this in terms of like business advice. They'll say, hey, you should really be diversifying your traffic channels. Like, don't become reliant upon Google. And that is fantastic advice. I mean, it's always good business advice to diversify, and every business owner should try to diversify. So I totally endorse that. However, I will note that search is really a unique channel, particularly for web publishers. Sparkporo, which is a marketing agency, did this analysis of the web's largest traffic referrers back in January of 2024. And they found that 74% of traffic referrals to websites come from search engines. And a huge chunk of that is from Google. I mean, you can see this pie chart that they have up here. And I 100% agree. You should be trying to diversify and trying to get traffic from all of those other slices on there. You know, you should get traffic from Facebook. You should get traffic from YouTube. You should get traffic from Instagram if you can. However, you can't really ignore that giant slice of the pie there that is from Google. I mean, it's the majority of the pie, and that is where a lot of readers start their journey. Google has trained people to go to Google in order to find websites on the web. And even if you're diversifying and you're creating content on Instagram or on Facebook, you know, personally, I sometimes I see a lot of creators doing this right now where they're shifting to video, they're creating content for these other platforms. The problem with this is that are you really working for yourself? Or are you working for Mark Zuckerberg when you create content for Instagram? And same thing, even though YouTube is a slightly better platform, it's still owned by Google, and they're going to do the same stuff that they have been doing to the web. And I guess that's another thing I would point out, which is that if you think you can run from what the AI companies are doing to web publishing to another platform or another channel, I got news for you. Like, they're all doing it. AI is going to affect YouTube. It's going to affect Facebook, Instagram. All these channels are going through the same stuff. And the video and the image models, they're a little further behind the text models. And so what's happening now to web publishers will happen to YouTube creators in a couple of years. And I could do an entire presentation about how Meta is using AI in order to usurp the role of creators, or how YouTube is using AI to slowly take from creators. I don't have time for all that, but my point being, these same dynamics are at play across all of the different traffic channels. And like, you know, even by the way, people will say email, you know, you own your email list, people will say, and to some extent that's true. You do own the actual email addresses, but you don't own their inboxes. You know who does? Google, Apple, Microsoft, and they're using AI to do things like, you know, they can send you to the spam or promotions tab. They're also starting to they're starting to put summaries directly into the inboxes. So AI is coming for email lists too. Now, the best source of traffic and the best sort of piece of advice, I'm not giving business advice in this presentation, but I will say, if you can, try to grow your direct traffic. Direct traffic is where somebody literally goes to their browser bar and they type in www.mytravelblog.com and they visit you directly. That's the best, because you don't have that platform as an intermediary between you and your reader. But at the same time, first off, direct traffic is really hard. Like, it's really hard, especially for new creators, to build up a business that's entirely reliant on direct traffic. So unless you're like a CNN or a New York Times, it's going to take a while. Even if you can somehow do it, like, great. But I got news for you. Direct traffic won't even save you from AI, because although you may have that direct relationship, you still don't control your users' browsers. And now they're just putting AI directly into the browsers. Google is doing this with Gemini. They are putting AI summaries right into the browser. So the user will come to your website and they're going to prompt the user to just basically create a AI summary of your site so that they don't actually have to scroll through and read it. And by the way, it's not just Google. Like, a lot of other AI companies are doing the same things I'm talking about. I'm primarily going to focus on Google because, as I'll explain later, they're the market leader. And I think a lot of the other AI companies are waiting for them. But similarly, Firefox recently announced something called Shake to Summarize on iOS. So what they're going to do is basically, again, put the AI directly into the browser. They have an example of a recipe site where there's a recipe for a chocolate drizzle berry cake. And in their own demo, this product works by shaking your phone, and then it literally pushes that blog post down, and an AI summary appears up at top. And so this part of the screen that was your blog post is now like the bottom 10%. I mean, they're directly encouraging your own readers, even from your direct traffic, to use AI. And so even direct traffic isn't going to save you from this. Again, I'm not going to focus on business advice here. I will say I generally am of the opinion that if you want to AI proof your business as much as possible, try to sell a product or service. What Google is really doing is, unfortunately, commercializing the web. And so if you can sell something, that's going to put you in a better position as we go forward. And for websites who are selling products or services, it's slightly different in terms of how this AI future may affect them. But I'm really focusing on content creators here because I think that even though I would encourage you to think about what products you could sell or whether you could have a premium membership or if there's some sort of service you could sell, at the same time, like the web still needs creators. We need people to create content. Like AI does not have senses. It cannot experience the world. It is reliant upon others who experience the world and put their content online in order for it to even be able to function. And moreover, like for me at least, the web, what makes the web great are the human creators. And the thing is I can tell you, man, content creation, at least when you're doing it the right way, like it's real work. It takes a lot of work to go out and visit places and write about them or to buy products and like actually review them the right way. And for a long time, Google would really preach. I mean, Google often says the right things. It would really preach like the importance of EAT, expertise, experience, authority, and trust. And doing that is expensive. I mean, it can cost a lot of money just to make a single article. And the web, I think, still needs human content creators. We still need people who are trying to create quality content. And that is real work. And I think that, you know, publishers and web creators who put in the real work deserve fair compensation. And so that's what I'm really fighting for here. Although I think products and services are kind of the good business play, I still think that we need to fight for the idea that content creation deserves fair treatment and compensation. And so instead of saying Google owes you nothing, I would suggest that we as a web community should start saying Google owes you when it profits from your content. And with AI, that's exactly what they're doing. And by the way, like, I just want to back up a little bit and say, you know, Google did not build the web. Google did not build the web. Publishers built the web. And this is something that I think it may be time for us to remind Google of. With that said, Google does actually sometimes say the right things. Like just as recently as a couple weeks ago, Google's Danny Sullivan said at WordCamp, the open web is very important to us. We don't function without it. So it's Google admitting that they need the open web. I mean, I think oftentimes as publishers, we sort of think of us as needing Google, but really Google needs us in aggregate. Google needs the web more than we need Google. Like if Google went away, users would just use a different search engine. If the web went away, there would be no point in using a search engine at all. So Google needs us more than we need Google. That is true. And even Google basically admits it. It's also important to remember that like Google didn't invent the internet and it didn't even invent search. If you were around in the 90s, you may remember what this looks like. This in the late 90s, search engines look like this. I mean, good luck even finding the search bar on Yahoo's homepage. And you had Yahoo and you had AOL and you had these, they were like called portals. And they were competing to be the one-stop shop, the portal to the web. And you had all this link clutter and you had everything sort of jammed in there. And they were really trying to be the entire web, to be the entire publisher. And then what happened? Google came along and Google said, you know, forget about that. We're not going to be evil. That's evil, the whole portal thing. We're just going to be a simple, clean search engine, and we are going to connect you to the web. We understand that the reason why you're coming to a search engine is because you want to find websites. And so we are going to just give you 10 blue links, and we're going to connect you to the web. And I mean, they marketed themselves. They gained market share by marketing themselves with this value proposition to users. Here's a 1999 ad for Google where they say google.com is a pure search engine. No weather, no newsfeed, no links to sponsors, no ads, no distractions, no portal litter, nothing but a fast loading search site. Reward them with a visit. And, you know, even to this day, Google's corporate philosophy webpage still says, we may be the only people in the world who can say our goal is to have people leave our website as quickly as possible. And again, that was really Google's initial promise is that they were going to connect users to the web. They were going to get you were going to come to Google and they were going to get you out to a website. And similarly, this led to sort of a social contract with web publishers where Google would send us traffic and we would create content that Google would index. And it seemed to kind of work well for everyone. And even Google has repeatedly acknowledged this. I mean, in a 2020 blog post, they said, we respect publishers' copyright. Google search has evolved since its early beginnings, but one thing that hasn't changed is the fundamental fair exchange between Google and the web. Google has acknowledged that there is a fundamental fair exchange between what we as web publishers do and what Google does as a search engine. Again, it can't function without it. It needs our content. It has always needed our content in order to provide something to users. And so Google, again, says a lot of the right things, but unfortunately with Google, you can't look at what they say. You have to look at what they do. And what Google has done over the last couple decades is built an illegal monopoly over multiple surfaces of the web. And that's not just my opinion. Like 3 separate federal courts have found Google to be an illegal monopolist. One found Google has an illegal monopoly over search, another over ad tech. So like if you're a web publisher who's on Mediavine, Raptive, you run any kind of display ads, you are affected by that. And lastly, that Google has a monopoly over the App Store, which is another important surface of the web. As we start to think about walled gardens, one of the places that we as publishers could potentially sort of flee or at least try to put up our own walls is through apps. But the problem with that is Google's also a monopolist there. So they're really monopolizing huge surfaces of the web. And the United States Department of Justice has really confirmed this. In a filing earlier this year, they said Google's illegal conduct has created an economic Goliath, one that wreaks havoc over the marketplace to ensure that no matter what, Google always wins. And I don't know how it is in other countries, but in the United States, our two parties, like they basically can't agree on what color the sky is. But the last administration of the Democratic Party and the current Republican administration do agree on one thing, and that's that Google is an evil monopolist. So what's happening with those search antitrust or with those Google antitrust cases? Well, I wish I had better news for you. Unfortunately, the search antitrust court came out with its remedies decision earlier this month and basically said, yes, Google has a big monopoly. Yes, this is harming the web, but it's so big and I'm kind of scared to really do much to break it up. And so unfortunately, that court's decision isn't going to do much to change Google's search monopoly. We are still waiting for a trial in the ad tech case. If you're a publisher who runs on display ads, that's going to affect you. So that's coming up. But even if that happens, there's going to be an appeals process. It's going to take a lot of time. Congress could fix this. And there are some efforts in Congress to maybe do some things. But the reality is that the United States Congress doesn't do a lot these days. And so I wouldn't wait for Congress. Other countries can do things. The EU is fining Google. But at the same time, they're really limited by the current US administration, which is using tariff policies to kind of assert control over the US tech companies. And because most of these AI companies are in the US, it really is US policy that's going to dictate this. And so I wish I had better news, but I don't think that we as a publishing community can wait for governments to fix this. And that's why I'm out here advocating for this. There are some things we can do. So some publishers are suing directly under antitrust law, and those suits are very important. I've got some up here on the screen. The Helena World Chronicle, Dotdash Meredith has sued over ad tech, and with respect to search and AI overview specifically, both Chegg and more recently Penske Media or PMC have sued Google, basically saying, "Hey, you're monopolizing search. You're using AI for reciprocal dealing and all of these sort of other violations of the Sherman Antitrust Act." Those are really important lawsuits, and I'm going to follow those closely, but they're going to take time. And what's going to happen in the meantime? Well, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, told us earlier this year, Google is going to use AI to expand its search monopoly. And that's exactly what it's going to do. Because this is what we have to realize. Google's they're not really a search engine anymore. Google is using AI to become an answer engine. They want to monopolize not just questions, but the actual answers. There's a lot of money in answers. And Google is very clear about this. Like, they are very clear about what their plan is for the AI first future. They have said they are reimagining all of their core products, including search around AI. Last year at Google's 2024 I/O keynote, where they kind of lay out their plans for the future, the head of Google Search, Liz Reed, got up on stage and she announced the vision for the future. And she said, we're reworking everything around AI And with AI in the future, Google will do the Googling for you. Google will do the Googling for you. This is their plan. So we're full circle from those portal days. We're back to the days of Yahoo and AOL. Google is no longer trying to send users out to websites. Instead, it's trying to keep them on Google and to use AI in order to become that one-stop shop for the web. And again, they're very open about this. Earlier this year, the head of Google Search, Liz Reed, gave an interview where she said, instead of you having to do the work to come to the information, we should bring the information to you. We should transform it in a way that you can understand, you can consume, you can comprehend. And I don't know how that hits you as a web publisher, but for me, it's a little bit patronizing, this idea that our users can't read our blogs and understand what we write or consume or comprehend our information unless Google sucks up our information, puts it into an AI, compactor, and then spits out a mashed up version of it that they quote unquote transform. But this is what they're doing. They're using AI to bring the information to you. So instead of saying our goal is to have people leave our website as quickly as possible, instead we're using AI to bring the information to you. And what does this look like? We all know, if you've made it this far in this video, I'm sure you've seen AI overviews. They're rolling this out slowly. They're boiling the frogs so that the drop in traffic doesn't happen overnight. But they've been doing this for, well over a year, and they're now rolling out internationally. These are very prominent in the United States. So here's a typical query that a travel blogger might have written about in the past: what to see in Ireland. And in the past, this type of query would have returned a list of links, and there would have been quite a few small and independent publishers in there with lists of their favorite places to visit in Ireland. Now, instead, we get this thing. This is an AI overview. This is basically a blog post, folks. This is a blog post. It has all of the elements of a blog post. It has headings, it has images, it has text. And they are using this by pulling from a bunch of different websites and compiling it all together and providing the information right there on the page. And yes, there are these little link icons, and sometimes they put links in the text as well. Not many people click those links, and I'm going to get to some stats on that in a minute. But even when people do click those links, Google is often putting links back to Google in there. If you look down in the corner of the screen there, these links on this page, all of them go to more Google searches or to Google Maps. So instead of sending people to other websites, as they've promised, now they are using AI to keep people on Google. And it gets even worse than that because they are using AI for additional features, especially in industries that or in verticals that they really want to target, like travel and finance, where they really think there's a lot of money to be made. In travel, they have this AI itinerary planning feature. And here's an example up on the screen. You can literally swap out different stops, and it's meant to be interactive to try to keep the reader on Google. And again, they're using all of our content to create this. Google's AI doesn't go out and travel Ireland and get expertise and experience in all of this. It just takes from websites and bloggers who have done this, and then presents it in a way that's really meant to minimize the degree to which people are clicking through. And unfortunately, it gets even worse because AI overviews are just the start. Google has repeatedly said that the future of search is something called AI mode. If you're not in the US, you might not have seen this. This is a screenshot from their announcement for AI mode. So they chose this example. They always choose travel examples for their demos because they're really going hard after the travel sector, which might tell you a bit about why I'm so animated about this. But this is a query for things to do in Edinburgh this weekend. It's a longer query, and you can see the output in AI mode is even worse than AI overviews. There's often fewer links, and that may change, but there's no longer the 10 blue links below. There's no longer the search engine results page at all. It's just a pure conversational AI experience. And so this is going to keep users on Google even more, which is exactly why they're doing this. Because you might say, why does Google care so much about using our content, et cetera? Well, they're basically taking over the role of publishers, and when you control the answers, you can make a lot of money. I think it was really interesting. Earlier this year, there was a podcast where the co-lead of Google's Gemini, Noam Shazir, said the following.
organizing information, is clearly like a $1 trillion opportunity, but $1 trillion is not cool anymore. What's cool is $1 quadrillion.
I mean, $1 trillion is not cool anymore. What's cool is $250,000,000,000. And he even did the little Dr. Evil thing with his finger. Because the main point here is that they want to keep people on Google so that they can make more money by basically becoming the one-stop shop for the web, by being evil, by being the very thing that Google told users it was, it was opposed to when it came out in that 1999 ad. This is all about money, and this is all about them replacing our role as creators in the web ecosystem and trying to suck up as much of that value as they possibly can. That's my opinion anyway, but I mean, here's one of their executives basically saying that's what's happening. And so what's happening now is that this creates a problem. AI search is basically breaking the social contract of the web, where it used to be that we would create content and search engines would index that content and send us clicks. Um, that's happening less and less. I think Chegg, which is an online education site that has one of those private antitrust suits, put it really well in their complaint. They said Google uses its monopoly power to force digital publishers to give up their content. And then Google itself is acting as a publisher with AI. And that's exactly what's happening here. They're taking our content and then they're using it to compete against us with AI. Again, skipping over all the expensive part of visiting destinations, of reviewing products, all that EEAT, that's expensive, that's hard, that takes effort. They're just going to use AI to take from our effort and to provide it directly on Google. And the effect of this is really dramatic. There have been a bunch of studies on the effect of AI overviews on traffic to publishers. One of the most significant ones was published over the summer by Pew Research. And they found that, those little links in the AI overviews that I showed you earlier? I said basically nobody clicks those. And yeah, it's pretty much, they found 1 out of 100 people who are shown an AI overview will click one of those links. And when you also include the links that are down below in the regular search results, or overall organic click-through rates drop by about 40% is what Pew Research found when an AI overview is present versus when it's not present. And there have been other studies that have different numbers, and they kind of range from anywhere from 20% on above the majority of clicks. But in general, it's a huge chunk of the pie that AI overviews are taking in terms of reducing click-throughs to publishers. And again, AI overviews are not the final form of this. Google has indicated that AI mode is the future of search, and AI mode is going to reduce clicks even more because it doesn't even have a search, those 10 blue links down below. And AI mode also really doesn't give back anywhere near what it takes from publishers. So remember that demonstration that they had? This is things to do in Edinburgh. This is a long query that Google had as part of their example when they were rolling out AI mode. Their own example, when AI mode is initializing, it will actually for a brief second tell you exactly how many websites it is scraping. And for that example, it scraped 94 different sites. And when I ran a similar query through AI mode to sort of test the output, I got back a result that had 7 links, 4 of which were to Google. So you're talking about, scraping 90 some odd sites and only providing a link back to like 3 of them. And those are to those 3 little cards kind of off on the side. And the main 4 links are going to Google. And that's pretty typical of a lot of the AI mode responses. A lot of links back to Google, a lot of websites being scraped, and very few sites getting any kind of links. And also, by the way, the sites that tend to get the links tend to be like the really high authority sites from the really big news publishers. So this is particularly a threat to small and independent publishers whose content is going to be among those 94 sites, but who are less likely to be among the 4 that are among the 3 that get an actual link back from Google. So AI mode is going to be even worse for clicks. If it were just AI overviews, we'd already be in enough trouble, but with AI mode, it's going to be even worse. And the net result of this is that web publishers are in crisis. I mean, they're calling it Google Zero. which is this idea that maybe one day we get to a point when there's basically no referral traffic from Google. And there've been a bunch of articles on this. I was on NPR for a story about what happens to the internet if no one clicks search links. And many other publications have written about how publishers are racing against the Google Zero Doomsday Clock. Or the BBC wrote an article about how Google may be about to destroy the web. This is a serious thing. The big publishers are taking this really seriously. And this is why I don't want small and independent publishers to just bury their heads in the sand, because the big publishers are taking this seriously. This is a threat to the open web. This is a threat to the ecosystem upon which we all depend for our businesses. So that's the bad news. The social contract of the open web is broken. But now I get to the part where I try to be a little bit forward thinking, and I tell you about where we go from here. Because the somewhat good news is that there is a new model that is kind of forming, and a lot of it's happening in secret. And so that's why I wanted to put this presentation out there to demystify this for small and independent creators. There's this new model called AI licensing fees. And I'm going to go ahead and explain what that model is, and then I'm going to explain how we can potentially get in on it, but what we need to do in order to get in on it. First, though, we have to rewind back to when ChatGPT came out. And I don't know about y'all, but the first time I used ChatGPT, it immediately hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, wow, this could potentially be a threat this could just change everything about web publishing. These AI systems go out, they scrape our content, and then they use it to create a product that essentially competes with what we do, particularly for informational publishers. And obviously, I wasn't the only one who thought this. Reddit, quite aggressively early on in the beginning of 2023, just a few months after ChatGPT came out, they said, hey, we want to get paid. We want to get paid for helping to teach these big AI systems. And the New York Times put out this big article where they had an interview with the CEO of Reddit, Steve Huffman. And he said, quote, crawling Reddit, generating value, and not returning any of that value to our users is something we have a problem with. And so Reddit actually went so far as to threaten to block Google entirely. They said, we can survive without Google. We don't need you. We will block you. Pay up or you don't get access to our data. And what did Google do? Google paid Reddit. In February of 2024, they announced a $60 million a year AI licensing fee. And in addition, although Google would say that it's unrelated, Reddit has seen an incredible increase in organic traffic, almost at the exact same time. So Reddit made a lot of noise, threatened to block Google, said, hey, we want more value back. And Google gave them more value back. So that was sort of the first deal that Google has done. And for a while, it was the only one. But more recently, Google is starting to do more AI licensing deals. They did a deal with the Associated Press to bring real-time information to Gemini's AI. And Bloomberg reported over the summer in a really important article that Google is currently in secret talks for licensing with 20 of the largest publishing groups out there. They're doing this in secret. They want to kind of get everyone in their own room so that they can try to get the cheapest price that they can. Because they're, of course, a lot bigger as the monopolist. They have a lot more leverage. So they're trying to kind of keep everyone secret. They're trying to keep it all happening in dark rooms. But this is happening. This is very real. And by the way, it's not just Google. Lots of other AI companies are doing AI licensing deals too. OpenAI is paying Dotdash Meredith, which is now called People. They're one of the biggest publishers on the web in a deal that's like $16 million is what it's reported to be worth according to Adweek. OpenAI has also done deals with The Atlantic, with Vox Media. Perplexity has like a $40 million some odd publisher fund that they've announced. I have seen more than 100 of these deals being tracked and hundreds of millions of dollars going into this marketplace. Again, a lot of it's in secret. A lot of it's happening in back rooms. And I know that like a lot of publishers will say, small and independent publishers will say, hey, Nate, like I don't have lawyers. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But like, this is very real. I really want to drive this point home. Like this AI licensing marketplace is real. There's real money. It's already happening. This is real. And this is what the big publishers see as the future of the web. In fact, even Google has acknowledged that AI licensing is going to be the business or at least a major part of the business model of the future for content publishers on the web. Last year at the New York Times DealBook Summit, Google CEO Sundar Pichai said, "There will be a marketplace in the future, I think. There will be creators who create for AI models and get paid for it." So this is happening. This AI licensing marketplace is real. Again, you're probably rightfully thinking, hey, I'm a small publisher. I don't have lawyers. I can't sue. I can't negotiate. How would I get in on this? Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what a licensing marketplace could look like from the perspective of small and independent creators. There are a couple different ideas being thrown out there. There's real money being put in by smart people to create real marketplaces where this could happen. And actually, the technical infrastructure is pretty much already there. So, as one example, Cloudflare, which is a content delivery network, a CDN, has this idea for something called pay per crawl. And it would allow even small websites to get in on AI licensing fees. And it would function kind of similarly in some ways to how display ads work, where you as a small publisher, like you don't actually go out and sell your display ad space and you don't sell it for every visitor. You use Mediavine or Raptive or one of these other networks, and they handle all of that kind of for you. How Cloudflare's pay-per-crawl would work at a broad level is that an AI crawler would come to your site, your server would return a response code and say, hey, that's premium content. We're going to put up a firewall and not let you in unless you pay whatever the set price is. And the AI companies would ideally give a budget to their crawlers, and the crawler would potentially engage in a very small microtransaction to be allowed to scrape that content for the answer. And there might be different licenses depending upon what the use case is. There's different ways, and Cloudflare has a lot of different ideas about exactly how we would break down how AI uses our content. But the key point is that there would be this automatic exchange that would happen where you could get paid when these AI crawlers are coming to your site and using your content, as they're probably already doing, but now you would have a way to monetize them. And this infrastructure is real, like Cloudflare is capable of doing this. Technically, it's not really a problem as I understand it. Yeah, and we have the technology. We can do this. We have the technology. And in fact, it's really good that Cloudflare is not the only option. I really like to see that there's multiple marketplaces for it. So another one that you could look into is called Tollbit. So Tollbit has something called custom license rates. I'm signed up for Tollbit, although we don't currently sell our content on there, but we do have them on for analytics and stuff. And this is what the dashboard looks like. If I wanted to, I could already set a price for a summarization license or a display license per 1,000 pages for my content. I'm not doing that yet though, and I'll talk about why in a minute. But the point is that this is possible, and you can go look into these marketplaces. Just last week, a organization came out with something called Really Simple Licensing. And this was put together by a group of web publishers, including People Inc., which is formerly Dotdash Meredith, Ziff Davis, Quora, Reddit, and importantly, Raptive, which I was really happy to see because Raptive is at least interest aligned with independent publishers, and I like a lot of what they've done around AI. So I'm really happy to see that Raptive was a part of this. And what RSL does is it's basically a content licensing standard. So it's meant to help a protocol to help work out exactly how you would quantify what a particular piece of content is worth. And this is just important technical framework that we need in order for this to happen. In terms of enforcement, they have a partnership with Fastly, which is another network that kind of has some other proposals similar to Cloudflare. There are very nerdy debates about exactly how these marketplaces should be set up. And if you're someone who really cares about the future of the web and really wants to get involved, I encourage you to get involved in those discussions. But for most web creators, I think the key point here is that we have multiple options. Like there are already multiple different marketplaces forming from a technical perspective. My recommendation is consider signing up for Tollbit or for Cloudflare pay-per-crawl, but do not set a price for your content yet. Don't actually sell it. If you sell it now, there's not buyers, so you're just probably not going to get that much money, and you're potentially going to be undercutting yourself in the long term. The marketplace really isn't ready for this to be sold. But at the same time, you should start to familiarize yourself with it. And if you sign up, like Tollbit will send you a weekly email analytic report with how many bots are scraping your content. And it's really eye opening because even though I block like every AI bot that I possibly can, I still get a bunch that are accessing my content through stealth crawlers and things like that. And so, you know, this is happening, and you can go look into this. But the thing is that you don't necessarily want to set a price for your content yet because there's not buyers on the other end. So how do we get these companies to actually like pay up? The reality is that these AI companies are only going to pay publishers who have leverage. We need leverage. And Google has been very clear about this. In fact, in an official filing in response to the United Kingdom's copyright AI consultation, they came out and they said it. They said, no single piece of content has value. And as such, pricing becomes a pure bargaining issue. So, in other words, Google was basically saying, and they said elsewhere in that same document, look, an AI content marketplace is forming. It's early days. We're doing some deals. Other AI companies are doing some deals. We see this as the future, but really pricing comes down to bargaining leverage. Okay, so how do we, as small publishers and independent publishers, get leverage? How do we, as the open web, all publishers together, get leverage over them? Well, that's where I come to the part of this presentation where we need to take action individually and collectively. Specifically, we need to block AI bots. We need to stop giving away our content for free because as long as you're giving it away for free, why would they pay you? So let's go through why. Why do I say you should block AI bots? Because I know some publishers are going to be like, hey, Nate, I've heard it from publishers. I've heard people say, Nate, I'm getting some referral clicks from ChatGPT. Perplexity is sending me 10 clicks a day. Why would I turn away free traffic? I need every click I can get these days. If I block these bots, it's not going to do anything except cause me to lose traffic. And I would say, look, first, like dig into your analytics, see how much traffic you're actually getting. It depends on the site, and you should do what's every website owner has to make their own decision. But see how much clicks you're getting. Are they human clicks or are they bot clicks? Because a lot of times people think they're getting traffic because they see it in Google Analytics, but it's actually bot clicks. Even if it is human clicks, is it actually generating revenue for you? And if it is it enough revenue that you could survive your entire business if that was the entire future? And the thing is that if this is the future, then we're really in trouble because a lot of information has shown that these AI bots take a lot more, they scrape a lot more than they give back to websites. Tollbit did a study that found that a AI search chatbot sends on average 96% less traffic referrals compared to a regular search engine. Ahrefs found recently that out of all of the website referrals out there, we saw that big pie earlier where Google sends the biggest chunk, only 0.165%, like less than a fraction of a percent comes from ChatGPT, which is the biggest AI search bot in terms of referrals. So you're probably not getting that much. Like it's probably like not that much. And I would say, like, I would really point out, the big publishers are largely blocking AI bots. All of these sites I have up here, the BBC, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, TripAdvisor, Condé Nast, Travel and Leisure, they are all blocking these AI bots from scraping them until they get a deal. And then the big publishers, they will unblock whatever company did a deal with them. That's how they're playing it. So you as a small publisher, you might take that into consideration. And you also should, again, really think about whether or not it's worth it because blocking AI bots, in my opinion, and from all the data I've seen, doesn't really affect traffic for most websites all that much. Raptive did a study. So Raptive is a big publisher. They've got a lot of independent sites on them, including me. And they looked at their entire network and they compared websites that block AI search bots from websites that don't over the course of like a year. And they looked at overall traffic to those sites. And they found that it's like a 1% difference between the sites that block and the sites that don't. It's like 1%. It's like statistically insignificant. Like you can't even say that there's a statistical difference. And if it is anything, it's like 1%. So are we really going to mortgage the entire future of our industry for a 1% payday right now? I mean, I know times are hard. I know everyone is scraping for traffic, but really, folks, if this is what we're going to do, if we're just going to mortgage our entire future for 1% right now, we're not going to have leverage and we're not going to get in on this. And again, the big publishers are blocking AI bots, folks. So I really think that you as a website owner have to make your own decision. But if we all blocked bots, we would have a lot more leverage together. And if you're giving away your content for free, why are they going to pay you? You got to think about the long term. So once you've made the decision to block AI bots, and again, I've expressed my opinion on this, but once you've decided to do it, how do you do it? And I know a lot of web publishers have asked me, Nate, like, I don't know how to do this. A lot of web publishers aren't very technical if you're on WordPress or something like this. So let's talk about the things that you need to do. These are your action steps for how to block AI bots. First, and this doesn't actually block them, but you need to update your terms of service. If you don't have terms of service, you should probably have them, but you need to put in there the language that makes clear about how you want AI to use your content. And specifically, if you don't agree that AI bots can be using your content to scrape and create something that competes with you, you need to say this. It's not going to stop them from doing it, but as a legal matter in a lot of jurisdictions, this may establish something called actual notice, or it may be necessary for you to be able to assert your rights down the line. And so this is something super simple. It's not going to stop them from scraping your site. Everybody should really do this. Put in language that makes clear how you want AI bots to use or not use your content. If you're on the Raptive network, Raptive does this by default with their new terms of use, which they insert at the bottom of every Raptive site. I put those terms up on the screen there as part of that guide that I have, the written guide that goes along with this video. You can find those terms as well if you would like to use them for inspiration, or if you would like to use them as a way to update your own terms of service, but just make clear, hey, you can't use my content to compete against me. That's step one. Step two, you need to update your robots.txt file. I've talked to a lot of website owners who don't even know what a robots.txt file is. And this, no shame if that's you. I mean, I've talked to people who have published for a decade and they don't know what this is. Let me explain real quickly. A robots.txt file is a plain text file that sits at your server and that bots access, and it basically tells bots what they can and cannot crawl on your site. It's a voluntary protocol. They don't have to comply with it, but it says, hey, for this bot, you're allowed on this part of the site and you're disallowed from this part of the site. It looks like this example I've got up on the screen here. It's just a simple plain text language. I would recommend blocking as many AI bots as you're comfortable with, but particularly at least the following: GPT bot, which is the training bot for ChatGPT; OAI search bot, which is OpenAI's search bot; Claude Web, which is Anthropic; Perplexity bot, Perplexity user; Google Cloud Vertex bot, and Google Extended. These are some of the most important bots, but I've got a long list in that guide that you can actually copy and paste with even more bots. And I've got links to even more beyond that. But you can copy and paste those right into your robots.txt file if you want to block the main AI bots. I want to briefly say something about those two Google bots, because a lot of publishers are really confused about this. They think that if they block, particularly Google Extended, that this might mean that they are blocked from search. That's just not true. Google's documentation is super clear about this. Blocking Google Extended blocks Gemini from training on your content, and it blocks Gemini from using your content, but it doesn't have any effect on search. Same thing with Google Cloud Vertex bot. Vertex, I'm not going to go into the details of Vertex. Vertex is like one of the most evil things that Google is doing. It is their cloud enterprise product. They will basically sell, like white label, their AI search results. So for AI companies that are building apps, like maybe if you're in travel, you've seen a travel AI itinerary planner app. A lot of those apps pay Google to be able to access your content and use your content to build and create their app, and they don't really send much value back at all. So they're using your content. Google's literally selling your content to third parties through their cloud application. I think it's evil. I think it's awful. In my mind, there's no reason why you shouldn't block Cloud Vertex or Google Extended. Those don't affect search. I'm going to talk more about Google later because Google is playing some games that make it hard for us to get leverage. But at a minimum, you should be blocking as many AI bots as you can. Again, go to my guide for a list of blocked bots. So how do you edit your robots.txt file? A lot of website owners ask me this, Nate, I don't know how to edit my robots.txt file, they say. So look, like first off, if you're on WordPress, you might have an SEO plugin like Yoast, Rank Math, SEO Press, all of those, they have built-in editors. They make it super easy. You can do it in like 2 or 3 minutes. Go to that guide I have. There's step-by-step instructions for every single one of those plugins. And again, copy and paste list of the bots that you can block. So you can copy and paste that right into your robots.txt and be done with it. If you're not on WordPress, my guide also has instructions for like Squarespace and Wix. If you're on something else, ask your host, ask your developer. You could also sign up for Cloudflare's managed robots.txt service, and they'll do it for you. So that's another option. You've got lots of ways. All of this is in that written guide. So update your robots.txt. That's probably the most important step out of all of these steps that I'm asking you to do. However, it's important to note that robots.txt is not perfect. First, it's a voluntary protocol. So these AI crawlers, they don't have to comply with it. And some of them use stealth crawlers, like Perplexity had been busted by Cloudflare using stealth undeclared crawlers to evade website no crawl directives. And even aside from that, there's this issue of downstream copies. So other websites on the internet may copy your content. Reddit, for example, had been very upset about the Internet Archive supposedly being scraped. And so this can create a problem as well. There are some website owners who go as far as to blocking the Internet Archive. So it's not as simple as just robots.txt. Unfortunately, we need multi-layer defenses. So the other thing that you should do is you should also block bots at the server level via HTTP access or something like that. If you're on Cloudflare, they're now doing this by default. And there's just like one toggle you have to check to make sure you're blocking AI bots. Again, instructions are in my written guide. If you're not on Cloudflare, ask your host or dev your developer about how you can go about blocking these bots at the server level. But you need to basically stop them from accessing your content as well. So those are your 3 action steps. Update your terms of service, update your robots.txt, and block bots at the server level. Again, instructions on how to do all this detailed step-by-step is in that guide that I've got wherever the links are. Unfortunately, we're not done yet. I wish that was it. I wish I was just like, do these things and we'll all have leverage and they'll pay us money. But there's one entity that is making it hard. And I bet you can already guess what company that is. It's Google. Google is trying to deny the web leverage. It's trying to deny us the ability to get leverage so that we can bargain for a fair price for our content. And now this is the part where I kind of get into the weeds on some of the stuff that Google's doing. And stick with me through this part if you're non-technical, because I'm going to try to explain a few concepts. To start, I have to explain the difference between pre-training and grounding. You see, when we talk about AI using our content as web publishers, we often kind of talk about it in a general sense, but there's actually several different ways that AI can scrape and use our content. A lot of people are probably more familiar with the concept of pre-training. Pre-training is how they actually make the initial base model at the get-go. So this is an oversimplification, but to really oversimplify, basically, if you want to make an LLM, if you want to make one of these models, they just take the sum of copyrighted material, the entire internet, every book they can find, they dump it into a data center, they run a whole bunch of statistical correlations, they just run it through this data center, and they train up a model that is basically a token predictor that predicts the next most likely token based upon the corpus of material that it was trained on. That process is very expensive. It uses a lot of data, and they can only train these models every so often. And so every model, whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT, has a cutoff date in its training material. And so whatever the date was that they cut off that training material, it knows nothing after that date. I mean, actually, these models don't really know anything because, again, they're just like prediction models or just token predictors. But it doesn't even have information about anything after that date, and for many of these models, that cutoff date is like a year or sometimes even up to 2 years ago. And so when you're talking about the web, like that's an eternity. And that means for a lot of verticals and a lot of niches, the pre-trained models really aren't that good. And it causes them, because they're just trying to predict what they think is the next most likely token, to have these hallucinations where they just make up things, because it's not really like a flaw. That's like a feature of how these things work. They literally are like hallucinations are a built-in feature of how these models are trained. And the hallucinations mean that for something like search or information retrieval, these models are not actually really very good on their own. And so how have these AI companies, including Google, tried to solve this? They've tried to solve this through grounding. So grounding, which is also called RAG or retrieval augmented generation, is, and again, I'm simplifying, but is essentially where they take a pre-trained model, like you take Gemini, and then you give Gemini a search engine and a scraper. So you give the model a search engine and a scraper, and then it goes out and it scrapes the web in response to a query, and it assembles that information as part of the prompt. And then that enables it to have access to real-time information. And that also, because it is grounded in the web, it is reduces the effect of hallucination. You can't completely reduce them, but it reduces the effects of the hallucination. So by scraping the web, these companies are able to actually get more value out of their AI models. And so this grounding is actually really important. So when we're talking about pre-training, that's where a lot of times, especially like artists, creatives, and I think even a lot of publishers, we tend to think about like, oh, hey, these companies, they've scraped the content, they're using our content. And a lot of people, I think, get a little cynical or they get a little defeatist where they say, well, hey, they've already scraped. They've already trained the models. What can we do? We don't have any leverage going forward. And for pre-training, like I acknowledge that's a problem. But for web publishers, it's actually grounding that is more important, because grounding is what AI Overview and AI Mode and other AI search engines use. And grounding is something that happens at the moment of inference. It happens when you make the query. And so they need access to the web for grounding right now, and they will need it tomorrow. And if we block them tomorrow, then they will not have access to it. And it doesn't matter that they already pre-trained their model for this purpose. So again, like I would try to shake a little bit of that cynicism out of there and realize like we actually do have some leverage here. Like Google does need us for grounding, because grounding is where their entire advantage is, particularly for Google when it comes to search. So again, pre-training is like for the base models for Gemini, and grounding is for these AI search features like AI Overview and AI Mode. So how can we go about blocking those, right? Like specifically, there's a difference between how we block for pre-training and how we block for grounding. For pre-training, Google does allow us to block Gemini from pre-training on our content, or to disallow it rather, via the robots.txt directive Google extended. And I talked about that earlier. Again, that's not going to block you from Google search. All that's going to do is block Gemini. Same thing for Vertex AI. You can block them from selling your content to those enterprise applications by putting a disallow directive for Google Cloud Vertex bot. However, Google is getting sneaky because they do not allow us to separately block AI Overviewed and AI Mode and still stay on Google search. It's all or nothing. It doesn't matter whether you're doing it via the server block method or by a disallow rules in your robots.txt file. In both cases, it's all or nothing, because they don't differentiate their crawlers. So basically, if you want to opt out of AI Overview or AI Mode and stay in Google search, you really can't. I mean, I know that there's going to be some SEO nerd out there who says, well, you can do a no snippet meta directive, and that will pull out a very small, you can use that for like removing a small part of your content for AI overviews, but it also affects your search previews. So it also affects how you appear in search. So it's not a solution for what I'm talking about. And like in that lawsuit from Penske, where they recently sued just a few days ago, Google, they talk a lot about this, about how Google is basically forcing publishers to provide their content for AI Overview and AI Mode by holding our search traffic hostage. They are effectively presenting us as web publishers with a Hobson's choice. Your choice is disappear from search or give up your content to AI Overviews and AI Mode. And of course, a Hobson's choice isn't really much of a choice. And for web publishers, for most of us, like we can't afford to block Google search, right? And Google knows this, which is why because they know that if they let us block AI overviews and AI modes, some publishers would do that, and that would degrade their product, and that would give us leverage. Google really, I mean, this is really evil what they're doing. And the folks at Google know what they are doing. I have been on this for the last 2 years. This is one of my pet issues. It frustrates me so much. And in summer of 2023, Google put out this blog post where they said, this was in the middle of Reddit making all this noise about blocking Google. They said, hey, we know that AI is changing the way the web works. We recognize that this is, going to evolve. And they said, we believe it's time for the web and AI communities to explore additional machine readable means for web publisher choice and control. They were saying like, hey, robots.txt isn't made for this. and we need more granular control for publishers. They came out with this blog post. They even offered us a, quote, public discussion. They promised a public discussion. There was never a public discussion. I had some tweets with John Mueller from Google months later where I said, what happened to the public discussion? He was like, oh, there was a discussion at some conference in Tokyo. Sorry you missed it. Um, they promised us a public discussion while they were negotiating with Reddit. And then we've learned that what they actually did was they considered this in private. In the DOJ search trial, a document came out, and there's been some testimony that's been reported on this, where Google actually considered giving publishers more choice so that we could choose how AI uses our content. And they actually came up with like 5 options in addition to the status quo. 5 different levels of ways that they might give publishers more granular control. And one of those ways, the most important, what we need is to separate grounding versus training, to be able to separately block AI overviews in AI mode, but still remain in search. And Google considered this. And if you can see on this document at the very bottom, option 6, they called it a, quote, hard red line. They were like, nah, we're not going to do that. And in fact, they rejected all 5 of the options that they considered, and they decided to just stay with the status quo and basically not give publishers granular control. This was so bad that the Department of Justice actually tried to make Google give publishers the right to opt out. Like, the Department of Justice recognized this is important to the future of the web, so they included it in their proposed remedies in the search case. And they proposed that Google should be required to provide publishers with a usable mechanism to selectively opt out of which AI products we want to be in and still remain in search. Unfortunately, the judge basically said, hey, actually, like, I totally get why you're asking for this, and I totally sympathize with publishers, but there's not enough evidence in the record for me to be able to put that in, and this is kind of outside the scope of this case, although I'm sympathetic to it. And so unfortunately, that's not part of those remedies. As a brief aside, I will note that Penske in their suit, which they just filed a couple days ago, they are trying to create that evidence. And they are trying to ask another court to do this. And that's really good, and we should support them in that, but that's going to take some time. And so as it stands right now, publishers still are left with this Hobson's choice where we're forced to provide content for these AI overview and AI mode products that compete with us and are breaking the social contract of the open web. And we basically have a Hobson's choice. So why is Google resisting giving us choice? I mean, they're really like, they know what they're doing. They are resisting giving us choice. Why is Google being so resistant to allowing us publishers to have control? Should be an easy thing, right? Answer is simple. Google and all AI search really needs our content. Folks, Google is really scared of publishers opting out of grounding. Like, they're really scared of this. I promise you, they are scared of what happens if publishers opt out because Google needs the web more than we need them. Again, they really do. These models, this whole AI future doesn't work if their crawlers can't access our content. Without being able to access and ground in the web, all the AI promises, that whole quadrillion dollar opportunity evaporates. Google needs our content. And that is why they've given us so little choice, because they drew this hard red line because they don't want us to have leverage, and they don't want us to opt out of providing our content. And we know, by the way, from testimony, there was testimony in the DOJ trial about the Google extended opt-outs. And it basically, what we learned is that something like 50% of the total number of tokens, like the size of the data set that Gemini trains on for its pre-training, it's like 50% smaller than what AI overview and AI mode have access to through grounding, because so many publishers are opting out of Google Extended. So that reduces the size of Gemini's pre-training data set by like half. And for pre-training a model, that's probably not ideal, but it's not the end of the world for Google, because they can get, the pre-training, they can get that from books, they can get that from other content. But for grounding, they really need our content. They can't, if they had access to only half the web, their whole AI quadrillion dollar reimagination of search would break, because they need access to the entire web. So we have more leverage than we think as a community. Maybe not individually, but collectively we do. So, what can we as publishers do now? Well, first thing I'll say, folks, is I know that Google can be pressured. It's hard, but they can be pressured. And in fact, in that DOJ search document that I showed earlier, where they analyzed the 6 different options for publisher control, when they were talking about the option 1, which is the status quo, Google actually labeled it as, quote, likely unstable. Like Google recognizes that the web isn't going to just sit around and stand for this. Like, we're not going to just, like, this isn't going to go on forever. But they decided to kick the can because they're going to boil the frogs a little bit longer, because the longer they wait, the less money they're going to have to pay when the AI licensing marketplace comes together, the more publishers that will be squeezed out, and the more bargaining leverage they will have. So they're not going to do it until they have to, but they can be pressured, so we can pressure them. If you are a publisher, you should be a part of this. Like, first off, talk to your audience about AI. Talk to your audience about AI, how AI, and particularly Google's use of AI, limits you and affects your ability to create content for them. If you've got an email list, if you've got a podcast, if you've got, wherever you talk to your audience, create content around this. I've done this with our audience, and I found that people are actually really sympathetic. Like, they're really sympathetic, especially when you lay it out for them. Hey, it takes effort for us to produce this content. Google is scraping this content, but they're not sending enough value back, which means we won't be able to produce that content. Talk to your audience. This really matters. You can help get some of them to come more directly to you, which will help your business, but you can also help to mobilize and get them to help get things to be different. Talk to your government. I know, a lot of people don't do this, but I used to work in politics, folks. Like, if you call whoever your representative's office is, talk to somebody there. A lot of folks who work in these offices, they just don't understand what's happening. So you sharing your perspective as a constituent really can make a difference. And a lot of these politicians, they're old. They don't understand how the internet works. Like, speak up. If we all do this, this will make a difference. I promise you, so that there can be some government intervention. But again, we need to pressure Google directly. So if you have contacts with Google, use those to pressure them. And if you don't, get loud on social media. I mean, I know sometimes I feel like I'm the only loudmouth on there. I get all these DMs and stuff from people saying, hey, Nate, go get him, etc. But these lurkers that are afraid of speaking up, if we all speak up together, it will have more of an effect. So I encourage you to join in there. Again, Google really can be pressured, and Google needs us more than we need them. And lastly, if all of that doesn't work, if Google still won't give us choice and control, maybe we should all take a lesson from Reddit. Because remember, and I'm going to wrap up here soon, but remember, what did Reddit do? Reddit threatened to block Google. And what did Google do? Just a few months later, Google paid Reddit. You threaten to block Google, Google pays you if you have enough leverage. And you may think, well, Nate, I'm not Reddit. I'm a small site. And that's true. Probably you individually blocking Google isn't going to do much. But together we have more leverage than you may think. Cloudflare CEO Matthew Prince did an interview with Crazy Stupid Tech recently. And he was talking about when they were doing this default blocking of AI bots. At one point, Google apparently thought that Cloudflare was going to block Googlebot. And Cloudflare represents like 20% of the websites on the internet, something like that. And Matthew Prince said that Google was, quote, so terrified we were going to block Googlebot. They were like, you will break search. So just 20% of the web doing this would potentially put a lot of pressure on them. And really, folks, like it may come to that. I'm not saying anyone should block Googlebot yet. Like, we're not at that point. It needs to be coordinated together. But if they won't respond to us, we're gonna have to at least threaten to do it. And I think you should start preparing your businesses now. Like, all that stuff at the beginning about diversification is good. Get started on that now, so you can be in a position where if we need to, we as a community can collectively block Googlebot. And basically it's like a strike. And there will be strike dynamics. There will be scabs. There will be strike breakers who refuse to do it and use the opportunity to get more traffic. But if the quality web publishers, including independent and small publishers who are important to the web, were to block Googlebot together, Google would have to move. I mean, think about it this way, folks. Imagine if tomorrow every quality web publisher on the entire internet at 9 a.m. said, Google, we are all going to block Google entirely until you give us choice and until you give us compensation. If every quality web publisher did that at the same time, it would, at 9 a.m., I think by 5 p.m., Google would already give in, because instantly Google's product would be severely degraded and users would not be able to find what they want because they're not going to Google for Google. They're going to Google for the web. And even Google's AI can't create content without the web. So users would start switching to other search engines. And Google would be forced to play ball. So we have more leverage than we think, folks. That's really the main takeaway point here. We've got to stop with this idea that Google owes us nothing and that we're all dependent on Google. Like, that is a mindset of a victim, and we are victims, but we also have a lot of power. Individually, maybe not as much, but together we can have a lot of power. And so it starts by blocking AI bots. Again, we're not ready for blocking Google bots together. That's going to take a little bit more discussions in the community, but your action steps today, and I've got this QR code here, are you should start by blocking all the other AI bots, including Google Extended. Update your robots.txt, block bots at the server level, update your terms of service, talk to your audience about AI, lobby Google and your government, and most importantly, spread the word, folks. Help get this presentation, help get this content in front of other web publishers. If you're in publishing groups or if you're on Facebook groups with other publishers, you know any publishers, so many publishers don't know this stuff. We will all be stronger if we do this stuff together. And so again, you can scan this QR code if you're on your TV, if you're on wherever else you're finding this video, there'll be a link. In all the normal places, you put a link. And I really appreciate you taking the time to, if you've made it this far, to listen to all this. Again, you can find me at Twitter at Nate J. Hake. This is my first time doing this video format. Like and subscribe in all the places, if you want more of this. And this was a presentation that I had put together last week for a speech at the Travel Blogger Exchange Conference. If you're a travel blogger, it's an awesome conference. Highly recommend it. You should go to that conference. But since I'd already put it together, I modified it and figured I'd go ahead and do a video. This took me a lot of work to put together. And I'm also really putting myself out there. So if you like this, let me know. Do you want me to do more videos like this? Should I also, instead of just tweeting, should I also put together more videos? It takes a lot of work, so I'm only going to do it if people enjoy it. But I'm really of the opinion, folks, we are at a pivotal moment. Pretty much everyone says this for the web. And we have a choice. We can either sit back and let the big tech companies determine the future of the web, and then it's all going to be walled gardens, and we're going to be in this feudal walled gardens. Or we can try to assert ourselves and we can try to change it. We're at an inflection point, and just a small bit of pressure can change the direction. And no, it's not ideally perfect. I don't love AI. I kind of wish to some extent, I just want to go back to human web creation. But AI is here. We've got to confront it, and we will all be stronger together. And so again, go do the steps in that guide. Share this with other folks. Google may be declaring war on the open web, and Google may be one of the largest companies in history. But the web together is bigger, and if we band together, we can fight back. Thank you.